day. My name is Phil Cockard. I am the president of Fraternal Order of Police Evergreen Lodge 1, located in Silverdale, Washington. We end up going on hiatus, not because we wanted to, but because of COVID. So some of you remember us before COVID when we were putting on shows. Well, we're back and we plan on putting on more shows. The object of our shows is to connect the police department with the neighborhoods. Over the years, with all the work policemen have got put on them, the heavy burden they have of working, the connection between them has dwindled, and it shows in today's life and with the problems we have in today. So we're here, and I have the honor of having with me Penny Sapp from Kitsap County. She's the jail superintendent, and I have the chief patrol officer, Jeff Mendy. And thank you both for coming. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Police work is, by our definition, we're peacemakers. And so the way we keep the peace is one by the laws that are there. That's to protect the people. And the other, the way we serve the people, because our job is to protect and serve, is by being there not only to enforce the laws, but also to help the people when they have a problem, whether it be mental health issues or it be family problems or whatever the problems is. So our Fraternal Order of Police works with developing a long list of almost 100 right now of outreach programs that can help no matter what the situation is. They're available, and the police, you guys have that in access to all those resources, and that's part of what they do. So let's talk about these guys. Right now with today's situation, Penny and Jeff, what's the biggest challenges to law enforcement and the corrections department? Whichever way you want to go first.
I'll let Penny go first.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's funny you should ask that. I have three challenges that I think we are facing in the jail, and I'm sure Jeff will chime in on a few of them. The first is staffing. We have a huge deficit of corrections officers working in the jail, and we're working very hard to get people hired. And the second is a pandemic. We are not done with the pandemic in the jail. In fact, we still have to quarantine individuals. We still have to wear masks, so that's not over. And the third is, and you touched on this, is behavior health, and that's chemical dependency and mental health issues. And all three of those combined makes it a really stressful job right now in corrections. In fact, I've been a corrections officer for 20 years, and I have to say that the last 2 years during this pandemic have been the most stressful, we're almost going into 3 years, have been the most stressful times in our career, because every day something's changing. And so staffing, yes, we have 15 open positions in corrections, which is almost an entire shift. So our corrections staff are working mandatory overtime. The second is the pandemic, like I mentioned. It's not over for us. In fact, we go through outbreaks and waves of that, and we have to make sure that the incarcerated individuals stay safe and healthy, and they social distance. So life is still different for us as far as the pandemic. And behavior health. This is something that I think also is a ripple effect of the pandemic, is that when we went into lockdown, a lot of those services were unavailable, and some of the people basically fell off the radar. And now we are seeing an increase of individuals who are coming into our facility who are suffering from serious mental health issues and chemical dependency.
And they're back to square one from where they started.
Exactly. So it's very challenging, and the staff are just working really hard every day with a positive attitude, and I think we're both hoping that soon we'll have enough staffing
soon.
and give everybody a break.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I jokingly say when asked this question out in the community, what are your three biggest problems? And I say staffing, staffing, and staffing. There's a lot of reasons why that is occurring right now. It can be from the pandemic. I think people are just kind of realizing what's important to them. And so we've had some retirements due to that. The problem when we have a retirement is that in order to hire a brand new person to replace that individual who retired, it's now a year plus before they can actually fill that position because we have to train them for a year. They have to go to the academy, they have field training with us. So every retirement, you're down one staff member for a year.
And you have to have another one step up and be a FTO, training officer, to
Correct.
work
So
with
it's
that
just
person.
it kind of becomes a little bit of a snowball effect. Obviously, the legislation is the other reason why the staffing levels plummeted. The narrative, both in the legislature and in a lot of media, is not helpful for our recruiting. It's not helpful for retaining staff. A lot of the people that could retire in the last year and a half have, because it's a fundamental change to their jobs, and the adaptation is not easy. And so they've decided that if I can go and enjoy retirement, I could go probably in 2 years, or they were planning on going in 2 years, but I can go now, and they've left. So we've had at least, I think, 10 just from that level of retirement right there. So that results for us in, we have, I think, 62 people or positions assigned to patrol. Unfortunately, because of retirements and light duty due to injury and some of those kind of things, even baby leave, we're down to 46 deployable deputies. We used to say that critical staffing when we got below 60 was crisis mode. We now have redefined what crisis is, but we're burning out our staff regularly. That's what's happening this summer. We are get some relief coming when we get some people out of the academy, but that's just hoping that we don't have additional retirements that we're not foreseeing. So once that happens again, we have 2 retirements, we're down 2 positions for a year, and there's no solution to that. So that's the struggle we have.
Yeah, I can see that. How are the officers' morale in dealing with the low amount of people that you have, and the work that they have to accomplish now is twofold on a lot of cases? That must bear a weight too, huh?
It is, and we're seeing it. We're seeing that people are not volunteering for covering overtime shifts. So we are, both Penny and I, and certainly Penny more so than I am, are in the awful position of mandating that people stay and cover overtime shifts. You can only imagine what that does to morale. But we have a basic level of staffing, both in corrections and on patrol, that if you drop below that are on duty right now, it's remarkably unsafe and it's scary. And so certainly in the jail, dealing with the number of inmates, you need a certain number of staff. But that goes the same for patrol. We can't have 4 deputies working the entire Kitsap County, because they need to be able to back people up. They need to be able to approach situations and de-escalate safely. And you do that with an adequate number of officers and deputies. And so that's where we're struggling, is maintaining that morale. If our jobs as administrators, leaders, and managers is to create a safe and comfortable work environment with half the staff that we actually need to do so, that's our constant struggle and what keeps us up at night.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were full staff, before this crisis happened and you were full staff, you were still overworked.
Yeah, still the lowest staffed sheriff's office in the state of Washington.
And you had calls that were backed up at the end of shift, and you had a mid-shift or something come in to try to alleviate it. And so this problem has just multiplied and got worse, right?
We still haven't recovered from the 2007-2008 staffing reduction due to the recession. So our staffing level in 2007 for patrol alone was 73. So you can imagine how many we'd have to get. That's almost 27 that we'd have to hire right now. So yeah, we were just starting to recover from that when the legislation and the pandemic both hit. And we also were reaching an age where we had a big hiring process right around 2000, and those people were coming up due for retirement. So it was just kind of a perfect storm that we just have not been able to get out from under.
Okay, just for my knowledge and the people's knowledge, what is the exact relationship between the officers in the field and the correction officers?
Want me to start with that, or you want to go?
You can start.
Okay.
I get to finish.
Oh yeah. Well, it's and that's really the real benefit of having us both here. Is I don't think that the public really understands how seamless that relationship is and absolutely needs to be. There's a benefit in that, Penny and I as division chiefs, and then with our third division chief of Detectives and Support Services, we meet how many times a week? Seems like countless.
Yes.
But there's constant communication of that, because what they're doing in the jail dramatically affects what we're doing out on the road, and what we're doing out on the road and what we're bringing to them obviously dramatically affects what they're dealing with there. So for us, it's always been, it's easier in the sheriff's office because it's under one office. So that has always been, I've never worked in an environment where that hasn't been the case. So it's just kind of a luxury for us to be able to communicate when we have concerns and needs that we need met that may be outside of what our booking restrictions might be or something like that. We're able to call up and get exceptions to that if the situation calls for it.
And I think that the relationship is both ways. We do have booking restrictions right now, not as tight as when the pandemic started, but the patrol officers and deputies were very understanding of our situation, because when COVID started, there was a lot of uncertainty. So we had to tighten it down a little bit, and everyone was very understanding. But at the same time, if they had an individual that needed to be brought to jail, then we would make sure that happened. In January of this year, our jail suffered one of the biggest outbreaks we've had in COVID during the COVID pandemic, and we had several officers out with COVID, and we found ourselves in some critical staffing situations, and the patrol deputies helped us out, this is unprecedented in the sense that this has never happened before. But if we have an individual that's at the hospital, that's incarcerated but needs to be taken in the hospital and admitted, generally our corrections staff sit at the hospital the entire shift and sit with them just to make sure they don't get away.
So you're down one more person.
Exactly. But this go around, Jeff allowed the patrol deputies to go out there and sit on that individual while we didn't have to get mandatoried, because our staff we have to mandatory our officers almost on a daily basis. And we were getting to the point where it was getting really tough to run a jail and then have someone at the hospital. So we talk about silos. There was a time where I feel there was silos in our divisions, but those silos are gone, and we're all one team, all one family, and that goes for Kitsap County Sheriff's Office and all of the cities in our county. They're all very supportive. And
that's really been brought to light in all of these critical staffing areas, that we're able to kind of shift these discretionary resources that maybe it's a task that we could do or that they could do, and we can just kind of slightly adjust that. And if you're freeing up one or two people on patrol or one or two people in corrections, that can make a dramatic difference in the morale of the staff.
See that. And positive too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You strike my curiosity. I go back, the old days. But back in my day, give you an example, if we got in an altercation with someone that we're arresting, and he broke an arm or whatever, the jail wouldn't accept him. We had to stay with him and babysit him until he was stable and broken arm fixed or whatever, and then we'd bring him back to the jail and book him in. Is that the same way it is now, or?
Roughly, yes, absolutely.
Yes, the corrections division has full-time medical staff 24/7, but we only have a certain level of care we can provide. And there are situations where we have to ask the patrol officers and deputies to take that individual to the hospital to get cleared for incarceration, because we want to make sure if someone's arm just literally was broken, they need to go get it casted. We're not going to do that, because once we take control of them and they're in our
You
our
have to
custody,
babysit
they're
them.
our responsibility.
Yeah.
And that means another officer going out. And I know that takes staffing away from patrol, but again, they understand, and that's one of the relationships. It's the same with individuals who are highly intoxicated. Yes, they need to come to jail, but they have to be at a certain, blood alcohol level, because we have to worry about somebody dying of blood alcohol poisoning or high detox issues. So.
And so what that does to patrol is, when we're taking somebody to the hospital or deciding whether or not to book them into the jail, we have to factor that in. Are we going to sit on this person for 2 days, and tie up a deputy who's not going to be able to handle 911 calls, who's not going to be able to back up their partners? We're going to have to mandatory an overtime shift.
You wave in the seriousness of the crime.
Yes.
We're constantly, with the limited resources, as we all know, you're constantly making this balance every single day, and every single situation has different complexities to it that you have to consider. So, it's 100% discretionary decisions when it gets to that point. And so those are the balances that we expect our sergeants, lieutenants, and myself to make literally every day, and countless of them. So a lot of times we'll just say, okay, well, we're not going to sit on this person in the hospital. They can get their medical treatment. If the hospital's willing or able to call us when they're ready to come get picked up, then we'll do that. Sometimes that works, and sometimes they obviously escape the hospital, and we find them later. But again, we're not going to do that for a murder suspect. But certainly, on the other end of the spectrum, maybe a shoplift of a small item from a grocery store. That's probably not somebody we're going to spend that kind of money and time on.
Okay. Shifting a little bit from here, major concerns for the departments. What's some major concerns for the community, Kitsap community, with the situation that you guys are dealing with on a daily basis?
Well, there's really three main concerns or complaints that I hear about regularly, and one of those has been the time-honored kingpin of all complaints, which is traffic and speeding. We get more complaints regarding traffic and speeding and the enforcement of traffic and speeding than anything else, and it's not really close to second place. The second and third, though, are kind of new developments that we've seen in the last year or two, maybe three, and that's the increase in homelessness and the extreme spike in car theft. And that's been well reported in the media. That is completely due to the legislation that passed. But the homelessness is something that we really are taking a pretty proactive approach countywide. We're working within the county policy on that, and they've created a HEART team, which goes out and provides services. So we're not playing, for lack of a better way to call it, whack-a-mole, and just dealing with the homeless in this particular situation, moving them to the next one, then dealing with them. I mean, that would be a daily process. Now we're getting them resources, so we're dwindling the number of people that we have to deal with. But that involves some time, and I understand completely the public's impatience with that, because I'm equally impatient with it. But that is by far a better solution than the whack-a-mole approach.
And I think for the jail is just addressing the myth that we don't book and hold individuals. I know that some of the community members believe that the jail is not holding anybody for serious crimes and misdemeanors. That's untrue. We are. We're starting to relax all of our intake standards. No, we might not book and hold somebody that just stole a loaf of bread. Again, it's that balancing act, but all felonies, DV, DUIs, and anybody that is a complete nuisance to the community is lucky enough to stay in our fine facility. Just because, that the community is asking for that, which, and I tout that the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office jail, and any jail for that matter, is the largest mental health facility in its city or county. So we try to accommodate everybody's needs, and it just goes back to just challenges and doing like we're doing today, expressing what we're doing and how we're doing it.
It's got to be very frustrating for you guys at the same time, because you know you're doing this for the greater good, and you're climbing a mountain that's very slippery, and it gets slipperier all the time in different places. You know, and with that, we talk about the courts and legislation. I mean, you've had a lot of effect brought on, you know, back in my day, a long time ago, covered wagons and all, but at a meeting, the guy said, "Did you train under Methuselah or Methuselah?" And I go, "No, I trained them." But, you know, we had loitering laws, we had vagrancy laws, we had disorderly conduct, and we had, you had to have a place to go. You couldn't, well, in the loitering laws, you couldn't just stay on the road. And we also, when we had homeless people, we would go contact the homeless people. If they had children, we go, well, you know, you need to find a home. You can't be on the street. Now, if you can't, we'll take your kids and we'll have them placed in foster care, and we'll find, you know, a shelter for you to go to. And once you get on your feet, you can come, you know, get your kids back. But you can't do this. And then they did away with all those laws, and they didn't replace them with anything. And you can see where we're at right now. So there's big concerns. I don't think the lawmakers, when they make these laws, or the voting people, when they vote on them, realize how they affect the entire country and each neighborhood in each city. And right now, we're seeing that all over the place with these homeless people. And I have no answers, and I feel for you guys with that.
Well, I think one of the things I really want to highlight is, you know, Sheriff Giese is really supportive of having a progressive sheriff's office, and he does that on patrol, but even more so in the jail. We have these great reentry services that we provide to those that are incarcerated to help them get mental health services, you know, chemical dependency. But the biggest challenge is housing. And until we find a way, now I'm looking at the camera, to get low barrier housing to individuals who want to change their lives, that is the only way we're going to address this homeless problem, the high crime rates and what have you in that sense, and really help individuals that just need a little guidance to get back on track. Because, you know, they are community members.
They are, and a lot of them, I don't think any of them are there because they want to be.
No, if you listen to their story, and they all have stories to tell, and they're individual, they just want help. And I think we have a great county, and we're willing to take those bold steps.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have you guys back, because we only got through half of my notes. But last thing that you'd like to say about your department, about the public, about any last comments you might have?
Yeah, I think, you know, I would like to dispel one myth that I hear too frequently, is that law enforcement can't do anything and refuses to do anything. That's a narrative that's just patently untrue. We are working really hard to adapt to some of these changes until we can get some of them corrected. We're taking proactive steps in assigning people to monitor, expanding our community resource program to really target problem areas and not just, you know, the traditional community resource officer programs. So.
Great, I think that's great. Fraternal Order Police, we back you 100%, and if you guys need anything from us, let us know. Also, every year we do a Officer of the Year program, and we'd like input from you guys who we should recommend and honor as an Officer of the Year. Well, folks, there we have it. I thank you for your time, and we'll be back with more information. We'll also have outreach programs that we interview the people running them, so you can find out what's out there, what works, and what you might need. So join us at future shows, and thank you for your time. And thank you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.